Not all billionaires wear diamonds, and not all heroes carry swords. Some ride rusty bicycles through cold towns and disappear into the night, unnoticed. This story doesn't begin with wealth or power or fame. It begins with hunger. With an 18-year-old boy named Malik Carter, an orphan, a delivery kid, someone the world barely sees, except when he's in the way. On the coldest evening of the year, Malik had just one task left. One final delivery before the clock struck 8. One chance to keep his tiny rented room and avoid sleeping in the dark on concrete. But just as he mounted his bike, he saw her, an elderly woman, standing alone at a bus stop that hadn't seen a bus in years. People walked by like she wasn't even there. But Malik, he stopped. Helping her would cost him everything. What he didn't know was that the woman he helped was a billionaire, and this simple act of humanity would become the most extraordinary decision of his life. The wind had a bite that night, sharp, thin, the kind that slipped past scarves and jackets and settled deep into bones. On the edge of a forgotten town, under flickering streetlights and skies, the color of bruised lavender, the world moved. Quickly, people hurried home with bags of groceries cutting into their wrists. Others kept their heads down, their phones glowing in pale blue hues. No one looked up, no one noticed her. At the far end of a cracked sidewalk stood an old bus stop, and beside it, a woman, thin, wrapped in a coat decades too old, her silver hair peeking from under a woolen hat once white, now stained with time. She stood still but not steady, clutching a worn leather purse with fingers that trembled slightly. Every few seconds she looked up. Every passing car, every shadow on the street, she searched as if waiting for something that wasn't coming. Her lips moved. Number 12? Willow Lane? Or was it Garden Street? The words drifted, lost in the wind like dry leaves. Few steps away, Malik Carter was sipping water from a dented metal bottle. 18 years old, tall from hunger more than jeans, bones stretched under a jacket washed too many times. His sneakers were stitched and frayed, and the back rack of his old bike wobbled with each breath of wind. The bike had once belonged to his mother. Now it was his job, his transportation, his lifeline. Malik delivered whatever people paid him to: medicine, groceries, packages. The pay was barely enough, but tonight's last delivery would just cover his rent. The clock was ticking. 8 o'clock. That was the deadline, miss it, and his key would no longer open the lock to the room he called home. He tightened the delivery bag strap across his chest and turned toward the road. But something, maybe the silence, pulled his eyes back too. The bus stop. The woman was still there, still lost, still waiting. She took a step forward, then hesitated, turned back. Her body language was fractured, like her memory. Malik felt it first in his chest. That tug. That voice in your head that says, "It's not your problem." And the second voice that whispers, "But it could be." He looked at the clock again. He could still make the delivery. Just ride, pedal, don't get involved. But then the wind shifted, and her voice reached him, fragile, frightened, and undeniably real. "Is this Willow Lane or Garden, bus 12? I think I missed it." No one else heard her, but Malik did. Before he even knew why, he was walking toward her, pushing, his bike beside him like a silent promise. "Excuse me, Mom," he said gently. "Are you all right?" She blinked at him as if trying to remember whether she'd seen him before, or if he was someone from a dream. "I was trying to get home," she said, "but I think the bus missed me. Or maybe I missed it." She laughed, softly, a sound more fragile than joyful, more break than music. Malik nodded. "Where do you live? Maybe I can help get you there." She opened her purse, rummaging without purpose. A lipstick without a cap, a handkerchief, coins, a bus transfer from 2 days ago, no ID, no address. His chest tightened until he saw it, a silver chain around her neck. At the end, a charm, small, oval. Engraved on the back, Margaret Whitmore, 48, Oak Hill Drive, North. Sighed. His breath caught. He knew Oak Hill. It was 2 hours away, uphill in this weather. Helping her meant he'd lose his room. He'd sleep outside, maybe for days. She looked up at him, eyes cloudy with age, trusting, not because he'd earned it, but because he was the only one who stopped. Malik stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "That's a bit far," he said quietly, "but I think we can make it." Malik adjusted the scarf on the rear seat of his bike, looping it twice before gently helping Margaret settle in. She moved slowly, murmuring about a grandson who used to ride bikes like this. Her voice was a thin echo of memory, half here, half somewhere far away. The wind cut sharper as they rolled out of town. Streetlights faded behind them, swallowed by bare trees and long shadows. The road bent and sloped, stretched farther than he remembered. Malik pedaled, at first slowly, afraid the seat might snap or she might slip. But Margaret held on, one gloved hand resting on his shoulder, the other clutching her purse like a lifeline. "You remind me of someone," she whispered at one point. "My grandson. He always had scuffed shoes and proud eyes." Malik didn't respond. He didn't correct her. He just kept pedaling. Each mile pressed heavier on his legs, the cold slicing through his jacket like it had grown teeth. Margaret hummed, a tune from decades ago, sometimes stopping to ask where they were, forgetting the answer minutes later. "We're getting closer," he told her every time, like it was new, just over the next hill. Just past the trees, almost there. They crossed frost-covered fields, bridges lit only by moonlight, and once stopped so she could catch her breath. At a roadside gas station, Malik spent the last dollar he had on a lukewarm paper cup of tea. Margaret insisted he take the first sip. "You need it more," she said gently but firmly, her voice lined with maternal memory. He drank half, handed it back. She smiled and warmed her hands on the cup. It was the only warmth for miles. By the time they reached 48 Oak Hill Drive, the sky was a deep bruise blue. Ivy wrapped around the iron gates. The porch light flickered. It was 9:30 p.m. Malik's hands were numb. His knees trembled. But he had made it. He knocked once, then again. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly man in a housecoat. His eyes shifted from Malik to the woman behind him and widened with disbelief. "Miss Whitmore," he gasped. "My God! Where have you been? We've called the police, the hospitals. "I went for a walk," she said, tilting her head, then added with a soft smile, "Or maybe a ride." The man stepped forward, voice trembling. "Please, come in. You must be freezing. Young man, come inside, eat something. Let us drive you back." Malik shook his head. His voice came out low and hoarse. "Thank you, sir, but I should go." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled receipt, and scribbled his name and number, in case she ever needs help again. The man took it with a nod, but before he could speak, Malik had already turned. He mounted his bike and rode back into the dark. The ride back was quieter, colder. Without her weight behind him, without her voice humming or hands warming his shoulder, the road felt longer. His fingers stiffened around the handlebars. Every crack in the pavement sent shivers up his arms. He passed the edge of town around midnight. The streets were empty, the houses dark, the kind of silence that didn't just blanket the town, but seemed to settle inside him too. When he arrived at his boarding house, he parked his bike, climbed the front steps, and reached into his pocket. But there was no key. He checked again and again. Jacket pockets, jeans, bag, gone. The doorknob wouldn't turn. The porch light still broken. He knocked, softly at first, then louder. Nothing. Then he saw it. A plastic grocery bag on the ground. His spare shirt. A towel. A cracked phone charger taped to the door. A note. 3 words, thick black marker. Past due. Locked. He stood there for a long time, the cold slipping into his chest, not quite ready to cry, not quite able to curse, so he did neither. He turned, got back on his bike and rode, nowhere to go but not ready to stop, because stopping meant feeling, and the cold felt safer than that. Near the back alley of Thompson's Market he paused, a place he sometimes helped restock shelves for day-old, bread or a few crumpled dollars. He parked behind the dumpster, knocked once on the side door. A light flickered inside. A minute later, the door opened. Mr. Thompson stood there in a heavy robe, a steaming mug in hand. He looked Malik up and down, shivering, hollow-eyed, exhausted. Didn't make rent, huh? Malik shook his head. Mr. Thompson exhaled through his nose, looked up at the sky, like he was waiting for some kind of cosmic explanation, then stepped aside. Well, storeroom's dry, cots in the corner, don't touch the wine crates, and don't freeze to death. Malik murmured, "Thank you," and stepped inside. The storeroom smelled like cardboard and old citrus. The radiator hissed with effort, but it was warm enough. Malik pulled the blanket over his shoulders and collapsed onto the cot. Heavy limbs, sore chest, but his heart was quiet. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't afraid to close his eyes, not because he was safe, not because his problems were gone, but because he had done something that mattered, because somewhere, not far away, a woman named Margaret Whitmore sat in a warm house, awake, with an old coat on her lap and a torn receipt in her hand, staring at his name, saying it softly like a prayer. The next morning arrived without color, just a soft grey light that crept through the frost-dusted window of the storeroom. Malik stirred beneath the thin blanket, the ache in his back matching the weight in his chest. He didn't complain. He rarely did. Instead, he folded the blanket with care, tucked it against the wall, and moved toward the front of the store. Mr. Thompson was already there, opening the shop like he always did. No fuss, no words. Just a banana and a half-warm cup of coffee pushed across the counter. Malik took both with a quiet "thanks," peeled the banana slowly, and leaned against the window. Outside, the town began to wake. Steam curled from car hoods. Kids shuffled along sidewalks. Somewhere a dog barked once, and then silence, another morning. Just like the last, until the car arrived. It pulled up quietly, sleek, black, out of place in this neighborhood. The kind of car with leather that never creased, tires that didn't hum. It didn't stop. It settled, like it had always belonged. A man stepped out, tall, composed, coat-tailored, shoes unscuffed, posture like he'd stepped out of a different world. He held a slip of paper, read it, looked directly through the store window, straight at Malik. When the bell above the door chimed, the shop felt smaller somehow, like it was holding its breath. "Excuse me," the man said, voice calm but carrying weight. "I'm looking for someone named Malik Carter." Malik turned, unsure whether to speak. "I'm Malik," he said cautiously. The man's expression softened. "My name is David. Miss Margaret Whitmore sent me. She remembers everything. She insisted I find." "You," Mr. Thompson paused mid-sip, said nothing. Malik looked at the slip of paper in David's hand, recognized his own handwriting, the torn receipt, the number he'd scrawled before riding off into the dark. It hadn't been meant for anything, just in case. "She's waiting," David said, "if you're willing." Malik hesitated. The idea of going back to that house, to her world, felt surreal. He was just a kid with no home, no future, no reason to expect anything from anyone. He didn't save her for a reward. He didn't expect a call. He just didn't want her to freeze. "I just wanted to make sure she got home safe," he said quietly. David nodded. "And you did. But she believes you gave her something more, a sense of herself." He let the words sit. Malik turned to Mr. Thompson, who just shrugged. The kind of shrug that meant, "Go before I change my mind. Your cot will be here." He muttered, "If you need it." Malik exhaled, then nodded. The drive to Oak Hill was quieter in daylight, less haunted, less uphill. Trees that had loomed like sentinels now looked peaceful, like they remembered him. The house, too, felt different, not a monument, a memory. David led him through a side entrance into a sunlit room filled with books and warmth. There, by the window, sat Margaret. Not the fragile woman from the night before, someone sharper, steadier, whole. When she saw him, her smile bloomed like sunlight over mountains. "You," she breathed. "You brought me home." She reached for his hands, her grip soft but sure. "I remember every word, every turn in the road. You didn't treat me like I was lost. You made me feel safe." Malik lowered his head, unsure what to say. The praise felt too large for the act, but Margaret wasn't done. "I don't know your full story," she said gently, "but I'd like to. And if you don't have a place to go, I'd be honored to offer you one." He blinked. "This house has too many rooms," she smiled, "and not nearly enough kindness." "You would change that." Malik took a small step back. "That's very kind," he said slowly. "Really? But I didn't help you because I wanted anything in return." Margaret's eyes didn't waver. "And that," she said softly, "is exactly why I want you to stay." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was tender, charged with something that didn't yet have a name. He didn't answer. Not. Yet later that night, he would return to the storeroom. He'd sleep beneath the same thin blanket, wake to the same cold. But something had shifted. He had been seen, not for what he lacked, but for what he carried. That quiet, steady light of someone who shows up even when no one is watching. And far away, in that sunlit room, Margaret sat with a heart less alone, already preparing for tomorrow, when she would offer again, not out of charity, but out of recognition, because sometimes family isn't who you're born to, it's who you choose to walk home with, in the dark. The next morning came softer. The sky, brushed with streaks of pale gold, seemed hesitant, like even the sun wasn't ready to intrude. In the storeroom behind Thompson's Market, Malik had been awake for hours. He moved quietly, sweeping the floor, organizing crates, replaying Margaret's words over and over in his head like the last notes of a song that refused to fade. No one had ever spoken to him like that, not with pity but with hope. He didn't know what to do with that kind of gift. Then the bell above the door chimed, not with its usual impatient jingle, but something gentler, softer. When he looked up, she was there. Margaret Whitmore, no driver, no coat of grandeur, just a wool shawl wrapped neatly around her shoulders, a small leather handbag tucked into the crook of her arm, and an expression that didn't ask, it offered. She smiled as if she already knew exactly where he was in the store. And maybe she did. "I hope you don't mind me coming again," she said, voice warm as the morning light. "I've been thinking about you all night." She looked around, then leaned in slightly, as if her words were meant for just the space between them. "I've lived in that house for a very long time," she whispered, "and it has never felt so quiet as it did this morning. Not even after my husband passed, not even after my grandson." Her breath caught. "You remind me of him, his kindness, his silence, the way he always listened more than he spoke." Malik didn't know where to look. Margaret reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of thick stationery. The handwriting was careful, a little shaky, but deeply intentional. "This isn't a contract," she said. "It's not an arrangement. It's simply an invitation." Inside was a note. "Stay as long as you need, no strings, just a room, some quiet and a bit of warmth. And if you still want to go back to school, we'll find a way." Malik didn't speak for a while. Outside, the town moved slowly. Leaves turned, cars idled. Life went on, but inside that shop, something important had shifted. He looked up, and, for the first time, not with caution, but with something steadier. "I'd like that," he said. "I'd like to come." That afternoon, David came back with the car. Not as a chauffeur, but as someone answering a promise. Malik packed what Little he had into a backpack. Mr. Thompson didn't say much, just handed him a paper bag of sandwiches and grunted, "About time." The car smelled faintly of pine and something else, possibility. Life at the estate wasn't extravagant. It was peaceful. Malik was given a sunlit room that overlooked a garden, a daily rhythm that allowed him to rest, read, and, by the end of the month, return to school, thanks to a quiet scholarship Margaret had set up in his name. She never paraded him around, never made him feel like a project. She simply shared her space, her stories, her time. They spent mornings walking through the greenhouse, afternoons talking about nothing and everything, and one weekend, over tea, Margaret brought out an old notepad. "I've been thinking," she said, "we could do something together." Together they founded the Willow Light Fund, named after the street she couldn't quite remember, and the night she'd never forget. Its mission: to help young people with potential but no path, to shelter the elderly who had slipped through the cracks, to remind the world that dignity is not a luxury, it's a birthright. Malik helped design the first programs. He met with counselors. He worked part-time at the very community center the foundation helped renovate, and every so often he still rode that old bicycle back into town. Not because he needed to, but because it reminded him of where he had started. Each time he passed the old bus stop and he'd slow down, tip his head slightly, and smile, because sometimes you don't find home, it finds you. She was invisible, he was disposable, and yet they found each other. Not through blood, not through money, but through one quiet moment, when kindness dared to stop and say, "Are you okay?" Malik didn't save the world, he just saw someone, when no one else did, and that changed everything. So here's the truth: there are thousands of Margarets out there, wandering streets, forgotten in crowds, and there are thousands of Maliks, kids trying to survive, who give even when they have nothing but you. You're not just watching this story, you're part of it. You can be the one who stops, the one who listens, the one who offers warmth before asking questions. Because the world will always be too busy to notice. But you don't have to be. If this story moved you, share it. Not because it's beautiful, but because it's real, and someone out there needs to believe that being good is still worth it. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I see you. That's it. 2 words, for every Malik, for every Margaret, for everyone still waiting to be seen.